Okay, so start of the year. This is just a little video I thought I'd do on why I chose to have a nom de plume, a pseudonym, an alias, a pen name. So, because it is in the minority now, everyone I went to uni with, most of the people that I know do not write underneath a pen name. They just write underneath their real name. Like it is a minority. And there are different little reasons for it. Like when I was in class, it was hard because it's not my legal name, obviously. So when I'm submitting work, I have to do it underneath my legal name. But then there were often times when, like for instance, my animation class, my website is under Josephine Renee, and the teacher kept trying to take away my grades, thinking that this was like a different person. And I had to sit down with him like for every single assessment and be like, this is me, like it's just my website, like it's my business. But like animation, they were like, huh? And there are a few things like that when it comes to like the legalities of it, because when it comes to copyright exists when a human writes a work. So if a monkey's done it, there's no copyright. If a computer has done it, well, it's not a human, there's no copyright around that work. But if a human writes it, then there's copyright immediately placed on that work. And Josephine Renee, like, although human, like she doesn't have a birth certificate. And so when like filling out contracts and like having some things, like it has to still be under my legal name, I feel, just to make sure that I'm like covered for that. But then it is sometimes hard then being like put in these situations where I really have to prove that Josephine Renee is me. Like uni, I swear I'm not plagiarizing off myself and my pen name, you know? So it's very interesting. Like it's things you have to think about when you're not using your legal name. So when I think about my pen name in that reason too, it's like the pen name is my business. Like eventually I would love to have an ABN, which is an Australian business number, and you can have that underneath your legal name, like that's so fine, but I'd love to have it under like Josephine Renee as my business, like this is my work, you know? And then it's like really interesting when it comes to books and the business around it. Like it's such a fascinating like sort of area, because books are one of the only jobs too that you can get residual income from. And you can keep earning money off the book that you wrote 10, 20, 30, up to like 50 years ago, and still get money from that. Doctors can't claim that like, oh yeah, but I fixed your lungs and now you've had an extra 10 years of life and I'd like $10,000 more dollars. Like that's not how it works. You know, a builder's grandson can't be like, yeah, but like more people stepped into this cathedral than my grandfather was thinking, and now I want $1 from every single patron. Like that can't happen either. Or teachers can't claim that they taught that student everything and therefore they're owed XYZ. Like it just, you can't do that for so many normal jobs, yet for books you can still get new readers and they can still be paying to read the books that you wrote so long ago. Because yeah, the ultimate goal for me is to make writing a profitable business for myself, one that I can sustain myself on. We were at, you know, a writer's retreat and we're all sitting around and we're like, what would you like what is success for you? And I ended up being like, oh, well, I'd love part of my life to be like financed by my writing, like just you know, part of it to be able to live off it, maybe not all of it, but you know. And she just cracked up laughing. It was actually Gabby, who's just like an incredible writer. She cracked up, she was like, wow, you'd never say that for any other job. That like, wow, I wish I'd, you know, earned some money from it and like could live off this job. And then the main reason why I chose, like what sort of got me into it, was that I was a child of Hannah Montana. And so I do want to be able to get the best of both worlds, because they are vastly different worlds for me. I've got no famous people in my family, I've got nobody that's written a bunch of books before, you know, they are average Joes. And for the most part have like zero interest in my written worlds, and I love them, I adore them, they are so supportive, they read my work but it's because of me. It's not because they've got some deep fascination in it. And they just care that, you know, I'm happy. And I knew from the beginning that my family are not my audience. For some people, they are writing their family. They're writing their father's memoir. They're like, you know, and it's for their family and anyone else who wants to read it and be like a part of that. But for me, my works are not for them. Like, they're for finding my audience out in the world that are going to enjoy them and need that like lesson or whatever it is. And I often do feel like there's sort of two characters in that duality of like having Josephine Renee and then having the me that I am with my family and friends that are outside of writing. And it does feel like there's, you know, the characters of my children's book of Joe and Hannah. And there are definite similarities between them. But Josephine Renee is who I want to be. Like, it's an inspiring thing. I am such an introvert that if I didn't give myself a persona and a character and someone that I was like trying to be, I wouldn't be able to put myself out there as much. I wouldn't go for the competitions. I wouldn't, you know, be able to speak to a crowd or like try and entice a group of friends. Whereas having sort of like a character to play and a persona allows me to adopt a different self that I really want to be, that I want to encourage people and talk to people and be on camera. Whereas my like very like introverted inner self is not comfortable with that. So that's something that just for me works, you know, having that separation to be able to adopt those qualities that I want. That's not necessarily like who I would naturally be. And like, you know, get dressed up and things like. So it's really useful for me personally to know that I have a safety net, that if I have a character that says something that's awful, readers aren't going to immediately assume that that's my political stance and my family's political stance. You know, like it gives it a bit of separation, that it's not directly my family's name, which is so nice. And it allows me to have a bit of, it lets me sort of put out there that like I can say a bit more knowing that there's separation. And it's, you know, in this day and age of cancel culture, in, you know, you just don't know how people are going to react to something. You don't know what context this is going to be taken in. You don't know what, I don't know what the philosophy of 10 years time is going to be. Like, maybe what I'm saying is the most awful thing that you can possibly say to someone in 10 years time. So it's a tricky like world to navigate. And then half the time too, people are struggling even more now to separate the art from the artist. They're struggling with hypotheticals. They're struggling with basically disassociating from different realities, being able to tell the difference between AI, being able to tell the difference between like this character saying something and me saying something, or me saying something within something and the context of something. You know, it's really tricky. It's a weird world to be a part of and to be navigating, but knowing that it's not my family name associated with that. They can't then drag my whole family through the mud for something that a character in my story has done, or something that they've taken out of context that I've said. Is nice. Like, it's good knowing that I have that safety net. So when I was first choosing my pen name, there was still this debate around, like, everyone was telling me of like, oh, you should choose a name like J.K. Rowling, where it's androgynous and could be mistaken for a man's name. There was still that huge thing where female writers were writing under names that could be masculine. And that is why I chose the most feminine French name I possibly could, because I felt like we should be at this time where we're like fine with reading a female author's work. And I genuinely, when I'm looking for fantasy, I look for a female author because I know they're going to be able to have some decent women in there, hopefully, and their tits aren't going to defy gravity, and they're gonna, you know what I mean? Like, I look for that. And I think we should be in a world where we're not, you know, only accepting work written by men. But it is really interesting, especially considering J.K. Rowling's other pen name, because I was at a street library and I picked up this crime novel, and it was written by Robert Galbraith. I don't care if I pronounce that wrong. It's not a real name. But Robert Galbraith, her pen name for her crime series, and I was like, oh! And I had this like twig in the back of my mind where I was like, where have I heard that name before? And I googled it, and it was like, oh, it's J.K. Rowling's other pen name. But if I hadn't like had that little like, oh, that's a meh, then I wouldn't have known. And there's so many people I feel that might have picked up that book and not realized that connection and therefore read it. And that's one way you can get around, you know, being infamous and being, you know, quite famous, and having like, you can write different books under a different name, totally, you know, different thing. I was speaking to Lynette Noni after an event. It was just so lovely, and she was so sweet. But because she's good friends with Sarah J. Maas and things, I sort of asked her, I was like, oh, do you think you'd ever write for adults like Sarah J. Maas is doing now? And she sort of like, she's so sweet, and she's so honest and genuine, and she had such like a gorgeous like fear that she was like, no, I'm so worried that because I write so much for children and young adults, I'd be so scared of them following me over into this adult space where it's not written for them. It is inappropriate for them to be reading at that age, which is so sweet. And it's so, I remember like hearing that and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna write from like going from a children's book to YA to adult and have like all the things in between. But it is like it is something you need to think about. It is something that is like, oh, you're right, like it's inappropriate for them to be following you into that space, which is so sweet of her. And I'm not saying that this would like fix it at all, like it's not, like there's way too much within that it's so easy for people, like if you want to find my real name you can, but like pen names potentially, like, you know, having works that's for your young adult audience and then having a name that's for your adult audience, like it is a way that you can get around some of those like things if you're concerned about it. And I'm not saying she should do that at all. She's an amazing YA author. I'll read everything of hers. She can stay where she is. I love that. And Sarah J. Maas's new work also is really awesome. And I had a friend like say to me later, she was like, hey, you know, if you become friends with Lynette Noni, you are one person removed from Sarah J. Maas. Which I love that. I was like, I need to become best friends with Lynette Noni. Like how, and I really want to already. She's absolutely amazing. But like it's such a, like you think publishing is this massive space that, you know, expands over the whole world and it's just huge. And then there's like little moments where you're like, oh, it's kind of small. Like it is a little bit of a small world, and it's so cute. Another reason why I really decided to choose a pen name, which has been like debunked now, it's not actually a thing, but when I was looking into it, this was something that was kind of put out there, and I found it interesting that George R. Martin was actually like, he'd written like 30 books under a different name apparently, and he'd like written all this stuff, and he, you know, was trying desperately to get it to be like commercialized and to go big and everything like that, but it just wasn't working for him. And so he changed his name, wrote The Song of Ice and Fire and what we know now as Game of Thrones, and it got huge. And I'm not saying he did this, but I'm saying that there could have been something in this realm that happened, especially within like the marketing and like that sort of department, that was like, wow, guys, fresh voice, like look at this, you know, unique, fresh perspective that this guy is writing, you know, like let's make this into a big TV show adaptation. Like it's just so new and unique, and like there's such a new author, which is what people do to sell stuff. Like you think of Rebecca Yarros. Rebecca Yarros had written so many books and then was like, oh, well, this is their debut fantasy book, and it got huge because they are an exceptionally talented writer that has been writing for so long, but it's like put into the space of like everyone wants what is fresh and new and exciting. And so it was put in this space where it's like, oh, it's this new fantasy novel. And then that just took off like insanely. And so I think, like, I don't necessarily think that's what happened. I don't think that's the case, but I think it's an interesting case study around George R. R. Martin. Like, I think he added another R or something, and there's like, and he has done so many books before Game of Thrones. And like, he's this phenomenal writer, but Game of Thrones wasn't his first series. And you best believe that if I write 30 books and they're not taking off and they're not doing well, that I change my name and I write a debut, my first book ever, under this new name. And I would hope that that might then, you know, take off and things like that. Like, it's interesting how you can play with that, and I just think you get a little bit more room to mess with that. But you can still do that from your legal name and everything like that too. Like, it's an interesting world, and I love that we get sort of the opportunity to use names in this way. So yeah, anyway, that's basically all the reasons why I chose to have a pen name. I'm really interested to know, like, what's your pen name? Why did you choose or not choose to have a pen name? I'm keen for discussion. Obviously, I'm not giving like a reason why you should or shouldn't do it. I'm just doing my reasons. There's like a lot of reasons why you should just have your normal name, because like, you've got a name, you know, why not just use it? Like, it's pretty fair. But yeah, and so I hope you write some good words today, and I'll see you on the festival next month.